Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 63 of Brainstoryum. Before we begin with some new story brainstorms, some led by me and others led by listeners, I have some news. I have discovered a storytelling group local to Brighton, where I live in the southeast of England. I've been meaning to go for months, but I'm still struggling a bit with the dregs of long COVID. So I was ecstatic to finally make it there on a Wednesday night. It's a small, welcoming group with a mix of professional live storytellers, writers and non-writers, and I found myself in awe of this unique art form of telling folk tales to a live audience from memory and everything. But thankfully, the group is very open to anyone getting up and having a go, and they don't all have to be folk tales. So I was right in there, clutching my copy of Portals and Immortals, and I read out the first 10 minutes worth of a short story in that collection called Axolotl, about a freaky, evil popstar who tries to steal the youth from a younger wannabe. If you've read it, you'll know the story is quite humorous and there's lots of dialogue from the very start. So I felt it was a really good choice for doing voices and sort of acting out a part. I'm pleased to say the audience cackled in all the right places. It was loads of fun to do. But what struck me as really odd was near the beginning, there's a mention of the main popstar character's song called Hump Me, Dump Me. And honestly, it had never occurred to me until that very moment, reading it out to the group, that this sounds like Humpty Dumpty. It hit me right then as I read it out, and I just knew that that's what people were laughing about. I spoke to them afterwards and they said, yes, that was part of why they found it was funny. But how strange to have written something that was meant to be funny anyway. It was meant to sound funny, but I hadn't even got the whole joke. My own joke. Anyway, what's extra exciting is that having introduced what I do on the podcast and how I get inspiration for my stories and try to inspire other people to write, the group has agreed in their next get-together, which is once a month, to let me lead them in a game of Exquisite Corpse. And I think I will encourage some story brainstorms in the same session. You can, of course, play the game without using the resulting sentences as writing prompts. But this is a storytelling group. These are my kind of people. They're imaginative and they're ready to hear stories. So maybe I can inspire them to come up with some ideas with me as we play the game. It's been so long since I've played Exquisite Corpse in person, and I've never actually done this with a group of people who'll be interested in using them as writing prompts there and then. It's always just been for some laughs, of which there are always plenty. It's one of the funniest games you can play in person. This really is the beginning of something I want to try someday, playing it with a live audience and doing some collaborative story brainstorming off the cuff, right there and then. kind of like a workshop. So, if you do happen to be in the southeast of the UK on the 2nd of October 2024, look up Brighton Telltales on Facebook and come and find us. But what I will do, I will find a way to share some of this wonderful craziness with you in the show after next, because it's just over 2 weeks away. I will share some of the exquisite corpses that come up, and also if they're really good or just really funny, I will type them up and create a web page for them at annatizard.com so you can read them for yourself. If there are any photos, I'll put them up there as well. So there will be some way for you to enjoy some of the fun and inspiration that I feel certain will come out of that evening. Anyway, it's time to get on with today's story brainstorms and inspiration. First, I have some story ideas from listeners inspired by the last show. So let's get on to that. Now, the writing prompt I suggested at the end of the last show was the howling chalice. Sean McGillis said, I'm thinking that the howling chalice is sort of like a supernatural smoke detector, only triggered in the presence of true evil. So, a chalice that sets up a howling noise when evil is nearby. This struck me as such a useful gadget to have in a world of magic. You could almost pick a character, someone ordinary and relatable, a bit downtrodden maybe, and just start writing a story based on them finding or stumbling across a magical chalice like this, or even winning it in a game of cards, even though there's no one there who seems to realise its power to sense evil. Great idea, Sean. Thank you for sharing. Eric Montgomery said, it conjures up images of a cup or goblet with a mind of its own, perhaps crafted by a powerful sorcerer who imbued it with magic. It's a cauldron of collective unconsciousness, holding the dreams and fears of countless individuals. Ooh, well, that is a great reason for some serious howling to start up from this chalice. A chalice that holds minds, the collective minds of all. Perhaps this would make this an especially dangerous item for any evil person to get hold of. There are just so many directions that you could take this. Thank you for your idea, Eric. Now, those are the two ideas I got based on the howling chalice. So I decided to push another word combination that came up in the last show and see if there are any listeners who wanted to have a go at that. And this one was the intrepid ferryman. Funnily enough, this inspired some very lyrical responses. The self-named village idiot said, the intrepid ferryman started a business a short distance from the ford. An entrepreneurial ferryman he wasn't. No passengers came aboard. I asked, do you have a sense of what this failed business is? Did the ferryman try to spruce up his boat and it all went wrong? Because I don't know why, as I was reading this, I just had this picture of the ferryman in a long cloak trying to sell burgers on the boat. But there are no burgers in the land of the dead. But the village idiot just replied, too much showboating. Well, there you have it. A bit of darkness can be twisted into humour quite effectively. Thank you for your idea, village idiot. Jan Maklazevich said, Sick of the sticks, he sly tricks a passenger into taking his place. Then he sneaks off to Venice for a year and a day for a much-needed boatman's holiday. I love it. It's so neatly patterned, like something intricately woven together. And again, a clever way to twist something dark and morbid into a piece of light humour. Thank you, Jan. Ev Days said, Jerry runs the ferry to the island of Berry. He's very insipid and yet intrepid, and his best friend is a katydid named Shallid. Together they brave the rave waves, and oh, the lives they save from grape graves. This is, again, such a pleasure to read out. The words are deliciously fruity and strange, but that last line about grape graves, there's a hint of threat there. But my mind is reaching into a surreal kind of space to try and picture that. Thank you for your intriguing imagery, Ev Days. And finally, Nick Vrakar said, the celebration had started before Claire boarded the ferry to the island, leaving her alone with the ferryman. She was already nervous. This was outside her comfort zone, and it didn't help that the ferryman was brave enough to think she was interested in the lake's backstory. So what I get from this is that the adventure and the danger lies in the dark history of the lake, and maybe who the ferryman really is. I have a feeling that Claire has no idea, but is about to find out. Thank you for your idea, Nick. Right, after that whirlwind of incredible and wildly different story ideas, I think it is time once more to reach into the socks of destiny. That's right. And for those who haven't played before or listened to the podcast before, Exquisite Corpse randomizes words and phrases from different players to create a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. So let me reach into the describing word sock and get our first word. This is from Anonymous. Adoring. What or who is adoring? Let's try for a noun. This is from Twitter ID Kester Parks 57818. Brunade. So yes, I had to look this up. This is Scottish Gaelic for brownie. So a kind of elf that turns up in houses sometimes to help out. So the adoring Brunade. Let's try for an action. This is from Robin the Mail Lady. Searched the heavens for. Okay. What was he or she looking for in the heavens? I've got a describing word from Rebecca Gleisner. Sociable. Okay, let's grab a final noun. This is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Paperboy. Okay, so I'll read out the entire Exquisite Corpse. This is rather curious. The adoring Brunade, or brownie, searched the heavens for the sociable paperboy. There's a paperboy in the heavens? What's he doing up there? Is he dead? Or does he fly really high? Is he delivering newspapers to an angel? An angel who doesn't visit Earth anymore. She hasn't found a compelling reason to visit Earth. She's been put off by a bad experience. Someone who prayed for the wrong things, or prayed for the right things, then didn't want them anymore when they came true. And the only way this angel keeps in contact with the world down there is by getting a newspaper delivered. A quality broadsheet, of course. No point reading trash in the heavens. So this is how the angel keeps tabs on the world, because she's decided she's given up visiting individual humans unless she can see there's a dire need, so dire that it ends up in the papers. The problem is she doesn't rank high enough to handle things like wars. You need at least 100 years' experience for that, and some really good references, which she's unlikely to get unless she doesn't up her game. Get some real gratitude from someone she's helped. Okay, so I've gone off on a slight tangent here based on a potential reason why a paperboy might be seen flying through the heavens. His big shoulder bag of newspapers, hard to spot against the lights of the city, that form a sort of visual hum, a tired glow that fuzzes up the night sky. But down below, on a balcony, peeks a brunette, a brownie, wiping her hands on a tea towel that she keeps tucked in her tool belt, which also includes 3 screwdrivers of different sizes, a pouch containing needle and thread, a sponge, a bottle of cleaning spray, and a mangled toothbrush. She's only 2 feet tall, quite substantial for a brownie, though city brownies tend to be a bit taller on the whole. So she knocks her head right back to scour the heavens. Is that a shooting star? Or is it a paperboy commissioned by an angel? She cups her muscled, capable hands around her eyes to try and focus and see past the insipid smudge of city glow to the cold sparks of starlight. And yes, that is a boy, rushing through the air, his legs waggling around as if on an invisible bicycle. So, he's no angel. He used to be an ordinary paperboy. As the brownie watches his legs flap around and round, she thinks, old habits die hard. He was given the power to fly, but he doesn't quite trust it yet. Or his legs don't. A groan comes from behind the brownie, and she rushes to her master's bedside. 10 years of service is not enough. Her eyes well up. He cannot die. Not now. Not when this poor old brownie realises how she feels about him. She turns and peers at the night sky again, narrows her unfathomable eyes. This requires the help of an angel, and now she knows just how to get a message up there. Oh gosh, so this is an unrequited love story too. Interspecies? I should have seen that coming. It was the word adoring that got me there, I suppose, but also the need to find a reason why the adoring brunette searched the heavens for the sociable paperboy. Sociable? Well, we haven't met him yet. He's just a speck in the sky at the moment. But if you decide to try writing this story, I'm sure he'll come closer, especially if there's a commission involved. And then you'll get to meet him, though perhaps through the brownie's eyes. It depends what she thinks of him, as much as what you might think of him. But before we move on to another Exquisite Corpse, I just want to reflect on this process. Finding the reasons why. That's one way of putting it when you're developing a story idea from just a few scraps of initial images that pop into your mind. In a story, scenes don't just happen one after the other, a chain of events that are just generally related. Finding out who the characters are is crucial, but then you use that to work out why the next thing happens, and then why the thing after that happens. In a longer piece, like a novel or a novella, the stakes can be raised and raised again, so there's a build-up of tension around these stakes, which must always be tied to this reason why. But even in a short story, there is space for this kind of thinking, finding the reasons why and having events rooted in the character's desires that push the events forward. They don't just happen to the characters passively. And without this push from them, from these reasons, you'll just have a kind of glimpse in the end, a set of moving images, rather than a whole integral story that really hooks the reader in and kind of justifies itself as a story. Because I've read plenty of short stories in the past, often classics or from classic writers, and thought to myself, why did they even write this? What is the reason for this story? And by which I mean the emotional or psychological reason why the characters get into whatever is happening to them. And this is why it took me so long to come to short stories as an art form, because it was a while before I started to find examples of short stories that I really loved. Anyway, something to think about. On to another Exquisite Corpse. Let's see what we have. Okay, our first describing word is from Anonymous. Coughing. Who or what was coughing? Let's see what our noun is. This is from Paul Benfield. Wombat. Oh my goodness. So we have a marsupial, yes, found in Australia. I had to think about that for a second. Who has reasons to cough. So our action is from Mariah. Found out the secrets of. Now there's an interesting, intriguing action. But whose secrets? Let's grab a describing word. This is from Starfield's. Elegant. I suppose coughing is inelegant, even if, you can't help it. Let's find the final word, and then I'll read out the whole Exquisite Corpse. So the noun is from Wendy. Dragon. So we have a couple of creatures here. The entire Exquisite Corpse is the coughing wombat found out the secrets of the elegant dragon. Okay, I think it's time for green tea. Don't you? Let's give this a bit of a stir. Right. Okay. The coughing wombat found out the secrets of the elegant dragon. My first thought is that the types of secrets that a coughing wombat would surely desire would be health secrets. So if we took this entire Exquisite Corpse, literally, we have a wombat with a cough. Maybe it's bronchitis, persistent bronchitis, because, hey, The character has to have their reasons why they really want something to push the story forward. And on the other side, we have an elegant dragon with desirable secrets. Naturally, I want to try and tie up the coughing problem with this dragon's secrets, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can always look outside the Exquisite Corpse and, it might turn out that the coughing is just a sideline problem. But the image I get when I read this Exquisite Corpse is of a sleek-looking dragon, more serpentine than lizard-like, coiled, its green scales like jewels, hidden away among other jewels in a cave. This does feel like the sort of creature that would have secrets, and is itself perhaps a well-kept secret. And against this, a coughing wombat seems kind of loud and inelegant, kind of hard to miss. But what could connect these two characters? A dragon breathes smoke. Could coughing wombat be a poorly chosen brand of cigarettes? Trying to be ironic. There are so many health warnings on the packets these days, certainly in the UK. Maybe harsh irony is the only way to go with branding. But the elegant dragon feels like a more stylish brand and a logo, and maybe the customers don't get sick quite as often. There's something magical about these cigarettes, or they would have to be if they didn't cause health problems, let's face it. And the logo is so much prettier with this elegant dragon. Or even the coughing wombat found out the secrets of the elegant dragon could be a children's book warning against the dangers of smoking, as in smoking is only natural for dragons. Not sure if that would really work. Maybe I just need to dive in, use the pause button, and let the writing itself create the magic. Grasp hold of a detail that shimmers, perhaps literally, and just go with that. Sparkles in the deep. There was no light source but the strange glow that seemed to flicker in the depths of the cave. Wombat, or so his mates called him, for his short, stocky figure and the copious chest hair that always seemed to poke out of the top of his shirt, resisted the urge to switch on his torch. He could sense the tension in his colleagues, the same twitchiness they felt on just standing there on the rock formations without any light. The silence swelled around them, a thick force in the darkness. Wombat's throat was fit to burst with the urge to speak, say something, but talking in this place seemed sacrilegious. Even breathing seemed wrong. They were intruders from another century, possibly another millennia. Wombat silently cursed the wheezing that came from his own chest. A decade of smoking had left him prone to breathlessness, especially when he was stressed or when the air quality was poor. Where was that light coming from? Gone. Had they imagined it? This was the west side of the cave. On their way in, they'd traced the ancient handprints on the walls. Wombat had pored over magazine photos more times than he could remember, but seeing them in the flesh still made him shiver. And this steered their journey into the wider, less explored tunnels along that side. The east side, where they'd only stopped at the threshold to sweep their torches over the rubble, was half collapsed, too dangerous to navigate, after it had been famously excavated to the point of collapse about 100 years ago for human and dinosaur bones. The fallen rocks resembled the broken carcass of some ancient giant creature, shadows jumping off its bones against the drag of their torchlight. The team had moved on quickly, plunging ever deeper along the west side, stubbing their boots against rocks, until they saw that glow. The legends of the locals had seemed unbelievable, fairy tales, until there it was. Now, standing, almost holding their breaths in the absolute darkness, they waited for the glow to return. It was hard to differentiate up from down. The blackness was dizzying. It seemed to possess a presence of its own. A living horror of things unseen emerged and retracted like a silent ghoul reaching forward to sniff them and then pull back. "Steady," Wombat whispered. "Absolute darkness can make you hallucinate." The whole team was familiar with the science of sensory deprivation, how the brain, so desperate for stimulation, so expectant, would create what it couldn't see, hear, or touch. The ghoul idea, for example, was probably a phantom of Wombat's own breathing, a pulling close, the drawing back, an illusion inspired by the movement of his lungs. There, the glow again. From far ahead it blushed amber, like an echo of fire. Wombat began to tremble. Dared they move forward? A tiny bead of white light flickered to his left, and it was 2 hard thumps of his heart before he realised it was just his colleague Jenna switching on the camera. "No," he whispered. He knew now what he couldn't have understood from a lifetime of reading and study. Some secrets could only be revealed with the lights out. What happens next? Surely they have to keep going and discover the ancient dragon that's lurking in the back of these caves. But what does it mean that it can only be perceived in utter darkness? I feel like this is tapping into something kind of profound. Some aspects of life are always just beyond our scientific knowledge, beyond the rules of normal logic, perhaps, or ordinary perception. Story-wise, I think there has to be some kind of argument, a disagreement between members of the team. Jenna, who's desperate to film it, in fact, who feels instinctively, like I think I probably would, that this needs to be captured on film because otherwise no one's ever going to believe them. Maybe Jenna and Wombat fight or have some kind of small scuffle. Someone stumbles, hurts themselves in the dark. It's difficult to find each other when torches are broken and smashed or batteries run out. And then maybe someone gets eaten by the dragon. Something to think about. I think it's time for another Exquisite Corpse. Okay, our describing word is from Robin the Mail Lady. Ravenous. Someone's hungry. Other than me for once. Our noun is from Rebecca Gleisner. Shipwright. So someone who builds and repairs ships or boats. Let's try for an action. This is from Delta D. Climbed through the tunnel with. Ooh, that sounds spooky and curious. Let's see. Our next word is from Mariah. Creepy. Well, yes, I am feeling rather creepy with this particular Exquisite Corpse. So let's find our last word is from Paul Benfield. writing desk. A creepy writing desk? Okay, so the entire Exquisite Corpse is the ravenous shipwright climbed through the tunnel with the creepy writing desk. I was looking at the word ravenous and wondering if it is related to the word raven. And then came the writing desk. Alice in Wonderland fans will remember the unsolved riddle of why is a raven like a writing desk? Well, I looked up ravenous in my big clunky dictionary, but apparently while ravenous comes from an old French word meaning to ravage, raven, for the large corvid, is a Germanic word with a completely separate origin. Oh well. But let's look at the whole Exquisite Corpse. We have a ravenous shipwright climbing through a tunnel. Is this some wooden framework around a ship that he or she is building? Or a tunnel built into the structure of this new ship, a deliberate structure? Why would you build a ship with a tunnel in it? A secret tunnel? For a captain who's paranoid about a mutinous crew needing a hideout? Something like that? Or a tunnel that has mysteriously appeared in a ship that she previously built. Now that would be creepy. She's come to investigate what seems to be a morphing ship. Wood creaks. Things keep moving around. This is quite an interesting idea, although maybe I've borrowed the creepiness from the creepy writing desk that's meant to come with her. What's that about? Why would she take a writing desk with her into the tunnel? It's hardly like a torch or a weapon or even a character, a companion who might be helpful, one of the ship workers, for example. But maybe it's circumstantial. This shipwright happens to be carrying a rather unusual, at the time, collapsible writing desk, a hinged fold-up thing which she took with her onto the moored ship that she was investigating, so she could make a sketch there and then of what she observed. She meant to leave it up on deck, but after meeting with the captain, something startled them both, and she ended up not letting go of it and taking it with her into the tunnel. This is odd in that I feel like we've already had a journey into an unknown tunnel in the cave with Wombat, but this is a very different context. But I will try and nudge my imagination in a different direction with this and see where this one goes. They had agreed to meet at dusk. It was that in-between time when the anomaly appeared, or so the captain had said in his strange, ominous letter, the inky letters growing tighter and more spiky in this paragraph, as if his handwriting betrayed an inner battle about putting this horror into words. Stricken by the tone of the letter, the captain's begging and pleading to come on board that evening, the shipwright had rushed through town to get to the port, her folded writing desk and parchment tucked under her arm, and a quill and ink in a leather bag secured around her hips, dabbing against her leg as she jogged. She hoped the lid of the ink was tight. But what an ordinary worry to have when faced with this fear at something unimaginable. It brought her up short, and she almost stumbled against the cobbles, slowing her pace. She didn't know if what the captain described could be real. The chances were he'd spent too long out on the waves, and the sea salt had addled his brain. She turned a corner, and the mast came into view. She took a deep breath to prepare herself for anything, but all this did was draw in a delicious scent of fried onions and stew coming from a local pub. Her stomach growled. In her haste, she'd forgotten to have supper before leaving. Well, at least her stomach would be empty when she was faced with the most frightening, impossible thing, if his words would be believed. On a ship, she remembered designing, planning, building. The hole gaped, as if a monstrous force had pulled the wood apart. But beyond it was blackness and the slow creak of feet on wood. What happens next? What has caused this strange gap to appear on one of her ships? Is it the hideout for some weird beast which sneaked on board without the captain or crew noticing whilst out at sea, burrowing its way into the ship and making a nest for itself? Is it a supernatural thing? Or is the hole a portal to another world? How did it come to be? Maybe the only way to find out is to sit down and write it. If you do and you find out, get in touch with me and let me know. And for next time, what should I prompt you to try besides this one? The creepy writing desk? I do like that one. It feels very on topic. What would creep you out about a writing desk? Does it have anything to do with ravens? Or leaking black pens? Or words not yet written? Stories with no ends? Get in touch with me at annatizard.com and share your idea if you'd like a shout out on the show. Or just do it anonymously if you like. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstoryum. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.